The hot debate this week, as you know, the future of U.S. spying programs. A presidential task force is now recommending sweeping changes to the way the National Security Agency gathers intelligence. President Obama says he'll decide on any reforms he's for next month. I'm joined now by two outspoken voices on the issue, Democratic Senator Patrick Leahy of Vermont, chair of the Judiciary Committee, of course, and Republican Congressman Peter King of New York. He's on the Homeland Security Committee. Gentlemen, welcome back. You're on opposite sides of this, and I'm fascinated by this topic. So here was Edward Snowden writing an open letter to the Brazilian people, published in Sao Paulo. He writes this: 6 months ago, I revealed that the NSA wanted to listen to the whole world. Now the whole world is listening back and speaking out too, and the NSA doesn't like what it's hearing. The culture of indiscriminate worldwide surveillance exposed to public debates and real investigations on every continent is collapsing. Congressman King, is it collapsing?
First of all, I think Edward Snowden is a defector and a traitor. And the fact is, there is no agency that is more monitored and more watched than the NSA. It's monitored by the courts, by the Justice Department. It's monitored by the intelligence committees in the Senate and the House. I think it's absolutely indispensable to our national security. The president said it's essential. The president said there were no abuses.
And first of all, that may be true what you're saying in terms of oversight, but the American people had no idea what it was doing. Now, you could think that's a good thing, but there was no real debate about this.
Well, I don't think everyone has to know what a spy agency is doing. By the nature of a spy agency, it's kept secret. That's the purpose of it.
But is it collapsing? Is Snowden right about the fact that this is collapsing? Is it going to exist in the future the way it exists now?
If it doesn't, it's going to be calamitous for the country. We need the NSA to remain. As I said, there were no abuses by the NSA. The president has said that. This is all, to me, a debate generated by the hysteria caused by Edward Snowden, and why we're listening to him is beyond me.
Senator Leahy, my sister-in-law from Kentucky is here. We've debated this topic, and she says, David, you talk about the founding fathers and the principles of freedom, that they're basis of the country, but that's not where the country is. The country wants what Peter King wants, which is these programs to exist.
I think when I listen to what the founding fathers said, that's what's kept us strong as a country for over 200 years. I think the founding fathers would be astounded to see what NSA and others are doing. You know, it's not Snowden. In a way, he's irrelevant on this. It's a question of how well this has been looked at and how much the American public knows about it. I was heartened by the New York Times editorial today, which strongly endorses the legislation Congressman Sensenbrenner, a Republican, and I have introduced to reform what the NSA is doing, and the president's panel on this, a very good panel,
but the panel
recommends the same thing.
But the panel wants to allow the bulk collection of our metadata, that digital
with controls,
with some controls. So that's what you support. So basically, the government shouldn't be able to stockpile it, in your view. A third party should have at it.
Well, we're going to the first public exposure to what the panel has said is going to be before the Senate Judiciary Committee in a couple weeks. And we're going to go into that great length. But there have been problems. And one of the reasons so many of the big companies, Yahoo, Google, and so on, are concerned about this is it gets them in crosshairs. And the other thing that bothers me greatly, we talk about what a great job they're doing. They did such a poor job at NSA that a subcontractor was able to steal all their secrets. And today, after spending millions of dollars, they still don't know what was stolen.
What if the president does not accept the panel's recommendations, which, again, the highlights are that you can collect all the data, but the government shouldn't be able to stockpile it. A third party has access to it, and then you only get to query it, as they say, if you have a court order. That's one big piece of it.
We're going to be a lot better off if the president and the Congress can work together, if we can stop having some in Congress who rubber stamp whatever the NSA does, and at the same time, those who say the NSA, we don't need a spy agency. Of course we need a spy agency, but let's have it accountable to the American public.
Why can't you, Congressman King, take a look at these programs and rein in aspects of it? What is the proof? I've heard argument. What is the proof that absent the government be able to stockpile this metadata, that you cannot get the information and prevent an attack?
First of all, David, what do we rein in? There has not been one abuse cited. And the president said that himself. There were no abuses by the NSA. So we're talking about something that doesn't exist. And as far as allowing the private companies to keep the metadata as opposed to the government, it's still being retained. And what it does is slows it down.
But are there conditions where abuse could occur? I mean, look, I realize we're not living in our revolutionary past, but that is the purpose of our founders, which is to make sure you don't put government in a position to abuse authority, and they are in that position, are they not?
But they have not done it because they're monitored by the courts. They're monitored by the Justice Department. Every time you give a police officer a gun, he abuses authority. But the fact is we don't disarm our police. We should not be disarming the NSA. And I wish the president would step forward and defend the NSA. What he says is, he says there's no abuse, the intelligence is absolutely necessary, but then he says we have to reform it. What does he want to reform if it's working? So I wish he would say that. He's having it both ways.
Well, so, Senator, what if the president says, look, I'll put some safeguards on the metadata program. The program stays going, and maybe we'll dial back some of this foreign surveillance. Is that a compromise you see in the offer?
That's why we're going to have the hearings. And the thing I'd say is about standing up for them. I'd also point out these are the people that had all the intelligence of the United States stolen by a subcontractor, and today, millions of dollars later, they still don't know what was stolen. That doesn't give me a huge amount of confidence. We can make them better. We will make them better. But the idea that we must do exactly what they want or we're not safe is not.
We don't do that. We don't do that.
But why doesn't Congress demonstrate the courage to pull back the power that's given to the president and that was given to him after 9/11? These programs have been re-upped time after time by Congress.
We have tried. In fact, I joined with a very conservative Republican, Dick Armey, to put sunset provisions in some of the Patriot Act. And that has required the committees to look at it. We can do it.
David, there has not been one abuse cited. I live in New York. I lost over 150 friends, neighbors, and constituents on September 11th. If the NSA had had this metadata in 2001, that attack probably would not happen. Right. They would have spotted that call in San Diego. Secondly, I live in New York, and there was the NSA which stopped the Zazi bombing of the New York City subway system, which would have killed 400 or 500 people. The fact is, no one has come up with one abuse, and you're saying rein in. What do we rein in? A system that works? Let's not unilaterally surrender. Right. Let the president come forward and defend the system that works.
Of course, there are reviews that take just the opposite position on that, who say that the information was there before 9/11 and it was not acted on.
The debate will continue. They didn't have the power to do it. They didn't have the power to do it. I'm going to leave it there for today. Congressman King, thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Senator Leahy, Merry Christmas to both of you. Thanks very much.
To you, Peter.
And we will. This debate will continue in 2014. Our program will continue right after this. The roundtable's back, looking at the early line on 2016. Right after this. Final thoughts here from the panel on spying. We've got a few minutes, so we should just be able to resolve this. What do you think?
What,
Leahy and King. So what's the right answer? What's the president going to do?
Listen, I'm a pretty serious national security guy, but I think if Dwight Eisenhower were here, he'd be worried about the concentration of power in the intelligence community. I do think we got to ratchet a little back, not all the way, but just a little, and I think that's what the panel recommended. So I'm sort of for it. We should not legitimize Edward Snowden, though. You should not be allowed to destroy a policy for some narcissistic level official.
I don't disagree with that, but doesn't it come back? Doesn't the public deserve a Congress that is capable of putting emotion aside and rethinking these policies? Congress has not been willing to address the power given to the executive since 2001.
You want Congress to put emotion aside and rethink policies? Surely you've been drinking this morning.
Thanks, everybody.
You know, I think we are going through a correction. America's good at self-correction.
Yeah.
And that
but it takes
after 9/11, we ceded all kinds of power to the executive, some of which I don't think we should have ceded in the first place. Nonetheless, it was understandable after 9/11. Americans are stepping back and saying, wait a minute, how much of this has actually protected us? I thought that the president's commission, one of the most devastating things was we can't point to a case where the bulk collection actually prevented it.
And by the way, before anybody criticize me or anybody else saying, oh, that's some liberal argument, or it's both a liberal and a conservative argument to say we can come back to the same place, but let's debate it.
Right.
That's the point. We don't know a lot of this stuff that's been done.
There should be a full-throated debate because, and I go back to David's point on health care, we have to reinstitute some trust in government. And I think regardless of where you sit on this spectrum, I think some of the revelations that you've seen have even shocked those that knew some about the program.
Right.
And I think putting in some common sense safeguards that if we're going to collect that metadata, that it be housed with phone companies, and that a court order is needed to go get that information from a third party
Right.
to look at it. Those are sensible safeguards that won't tear down our ability.
And I mentioned
to
my
stop
sister-in-law,
terrorism.
so I should mention her sister, who's my wife, who is in law enforcement, who you know well, said the fact that it is so broad, that this bulk collection is so broad, is what makes it safer. Because the government is not concerned about who's looking at what website. They are really just collecting data to be able to
But
protect
look, the bottom
country.
line is this is a tough nut to crack. And the debate between privacy and security is a very difficult one to balance out. And I think the president and Congress, they're going to have to figure out a balance. I suspect he's going to end up accepting some of those panel recommendations and rejecting others.
All right. Thank you all very much. Happy holidays. We mentioned Burke, the founding fathers, my wife, my sister-in-law.
Smarter already.
It's like a civics class.
And the French healthcare system.
Merry Christmas, Feliz Navidad.
Feliz Navidad. Thanks to all of you. Check out something I wrote online as well.